Okay, so for the past few years, there's been this huge raging debate, right? The future of work. Companies are basically saying, everybody back to the office. But a whole lot of us got a taste of that remote work freedom and, well, we're not so keen on giving it up. So let's just dive right in. We're going to unpack the surprisingly recent and honestly kind of weird history of the office job. All right, this is the question, isn't it? The one on everybody's mind. After this massive worldwide remote work experiment, is the office job actually over? Did we kill the commute for good? I mean, for a minute there, it really felt like a revolution was happening. But as we're finding out, trying to undo 150 years of tradition, yeah, that's turning out to be a much tougher fight than we thought. And, the numbers really tell the story here. It's a total roller coaster. Before 2020, working from home, that was like a super niche perk for just over 7% of us. Then, at the absolute peak of the pandemic, that number just skyrocketed to over 60%. But now, look where we are. We've kind of settled back down to around 27%. So that big dream of permanent remote work for everybody, it seems to be fading. And we really need to dig into why that is. So, to figure out where we're going, we've got to look back at where we've been. And here's the crazy thing. The most important thing to get your head around. The office, it's not some timeless institution. It's basically a modern fad in the grand scheme of things. I mean, really think about it. For pretty much all of human history, work meant using your body. You were out in a field, you were hammering metal, you were laying bricks. It was physical. This whole idea that work is something you do with your brain, sitting at a desk, staring at a screen, man, that is so new, it's barely a blip on the radar. And it's a concept that has completely rewired how we live. So where did this whole thing even start? This idea of a special place just for paperwork? Well, it turns out, if you want to run an empire, you're going to need a lot of it. Yeah, this idea of the office didn't just pop up overnight. It evolved super slowly. You can trace it back to something like the Roman tabletum, which was really just a room for managing household stuff. Fast forward a few centuries, and you've got monks in scriptoriums copying manuscripts. But the real game changer? Global trade. Big operations like the East India Company needed these massive administrative hubs just to keep track of all their money. And that set the stage for what would become the back office during the Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution really split the world of work in two. On one hand, you had the front office, which was the factory floor. Think loud, dangerous, grimy. And on the other, you had the back office, these quiet, clean rooms where clerks pushed paper. Now, this separation was huge because a clerk's skills, they were transferable. You could take your accounting skills from a textile mill to a shipping company, no problem. The factory worker, though, they were literally tied to their machine. This gave office workers a whole new kind of status and economic power. Okay, so this new class of worker, the office worker, really sets the scene for the 20th century. And this is where things get interesting. It's an era where brand new technology and this crazy obsession with scientific management just collide, forging the modern office as we know it, for better and, as we'll see, definitely for worse. You want to know a perfect example of how the past is still totally messing with our present? Look down at your keyboard. The typewriter was a complete revolution, right? It was fast, it was clean, and it opened the door for tons of women to join the workforce. But that QWERT layout we all use, it wasn't designed to make you type faster. It was literally designed to slow you down so the mechanical keys on old typewriters wouldn't jam. That's right, we are still living with a solution to a 150-year-old mechanical problem. And then this guy comes along, Frederick Winslow Taylor. And his big idea, which gets called Taylorism, was basically to take a stopwatch and a clipboard to every single job. He'd break down every task into the tiniest possible steps to find the one best way to do it, all for maximum efficiency. Suddenly, the office wasn't a place for people anymore. It was a machine, and the workers, well, they were just cogs to be optimized. But, not everyone was on board with this whole soul-crushing efficiency thing. And that's where our tragic hero comes in, a guy named Robert Probst. He was a researcher, and he absolutely hated the oppressive, sterile office layouts of the 1960s. He genuinely wanted to build something better, something that would actually free the worker. So his first vision was called the Action Office. And honestly, it was brilliant. It had standing desks, different zones for different kinds of work. It was all about being flexible and collaborative. But the managers, they hated it. It was too weird, too expensive. So Probst goes back to the drawing board. He comes up with a simplified, cheaper, modular version, the Action Office 2. And in doing that, he accidentally invented the cubicle. And oh man, did the market love it. Why? It was cheap, it was easy to set up, and you could cram a ton of people into a small space. By 1998, a staggering 40 million Americans were working in a cubicle. It became so common that it stopped being a design. It just was the office. And this is where the story gets truly tragic. The guy who wanted to liberate the office worker ended up creating the ultimate symbol of corporate monotony. Before he died, Robert Probst looked at what his invention had become, those endless seas of gray fabric wall boxes, and he called it a hellhole, his own creation. But the reign of the gray cubicle couldn't last forever, right? And the thing that finally started to break its hold was, no surprise, the internet. The dot-com boom came along and just completely changed the way we thought about what an office could be. All of a sudden, the office wasn't just a place to get work done. It was a statement piece. It was a branding tool. Tech companies started this war for talent, and the weapon they used was the office itself. We're talking these insane campuses with custom furniture, fancy art, free food, the whole shebang. How your office looked became just as important as what you did there. It was all about signaling status. But this obsession with appearances also helped fuel this really strange phenomenon. It was an idea best described by the anthropologist David Graeber, and he called them bullshit jobs. Now, these are roles that don't actually create any real value. They basically exist just to make a manager or a whole organization feel important. Think about all those layers of middle management or jobs that are all about creating reports that nobody ever reads. There's actually a pretty simple test for this. If someone at a party asks what you do for a living, and you can't explain it in 3 simple concrete words, like I build houses or I teach kids, then, well, you might just have one of these jobs. And it's these roles that often justify keeping the lights on in these massive office buildings, creating this kind of illusion of productivity. And that brings us full circle, right back to today. The pandemic basically forced this massive global reckoning. It made us all ask, what work is actually necessary? And now we're all just trying to navigate the messy, complicated aftermath of that huge experiment. Look, working from home has its perks, for sure, but it didn't take long for some real problems to start popping up. We started seeing data that remote workers were actually getting laid off more often. And it makes sense, right? It's harder for younger employees to just learn by watching their peers. Teams start to feel disconnected, and even simple communication can just break down when you're not in the same room. So where does all this leave us? Well, it looks like the future is hybrid. That seems to be the model everyone is settling on. But here's a little twist for you. While everyone is panicking about AI taking their job, the much bigger, more immediate threat is just old-fashioned outsourcing. And all of this is part of a bigger status shift. For younger generations, that traditional corner office job, it just isn't the big aspirational goal it used to be. And you can see this change in the physical offices themselves. The stuffy suit and tie, mostly gone. The new offices are designed to blend work and life. You're seeing more outdoor spaces like courtyards, quiet private booths for focus work, and just generally more comfortable casual areas. That strict wall between work and home is dissolving, but in a totally new way. So if you take away just one thing from all of this, let it be this. The office isn't set in stone. It's not permanent. It's just an idea. And it's an idea that's been invented and reinvented again and again, from Roman rooms to factory back offices, from cubicle farms to those flashy tech campuses. So the real question now isn't if it's going to change again. The question is, who's going to be the one to reinvent it next? That's a story we all get to help write.